Hola clase, esta noche vamos a hablar del subjuntivo. We're only going to talk about how to conjugate the subjunctive in the present tense. We're not going to talk about when to use it yet. The subjunctive isn't actually a tense, it's a mood pertaining to how someone feels about something. Whether they're doubtful, it's hypothetical, there's a whole bunch of reasons, so we're going to talk about that more, but first we're going to talk about how to conjugate it properly. There's many rules, and we're going to go through a bunch of them today, but we will continue to practice this and break this down further. I have a lot of examples throughout this video, a lot of six-packs that aren't necessarily put in your notes, so feel free to include these in your notes as well, just so that you have the best possible set of notes to study from. Okay, so like I said, this is conjugated a little bit differently. This is all present tense subjunctive, but the way that we form it is much different than any way that we've ever formed any kind of tense before. Your first step in forming the subjunctive is to make the yo. Por ejemplo, I'm going to use the verb hablar to show you how to form the subjunctive. So I'm going to make the yo form of hablar, which would be hablo. My second step is to drop the O. Now I take hablo and I drop the O. So make the yo, drop the O, and add the opposite ending. So we're going to talk about what the opposite ending means. If you have an AR verb, you're going to conjugate the endings into the ER, present tense endings. If you have an ER or IR verb, then you're going to conjugate it into an AR ending. This is how I would get hable from hablar. I have hablar, which is an AR ending, and I'm going to give it ER endings. So it's going to be hable in the yo form, hables in the to form, and so on. Here's the whole six-pack. Yo hable, tú hables, él hable, nosotros hablemos, vosotros habléis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes hablen. And finally, I add my opposite endings. It's an ER, IR verb, therefore it's going to be AR endings. Corra. From there, as you can see in my six-pack, I just conjugate it all as I would an AR present tense verb. Corra, corras, corra, corramos, corráis, corran. Okay, practícalo. You have a few examples in your packet, so go ahead and conjugate for those verbs. We will go over them mañana. Now let's talk about stem changing verbs. Just like in a normal present tense verb, the nosotros and the vosotros don't stem change. Okay, so por ejemplo, yo tengo entender, to understand. This is a normal E to IE present tense stem changing verb. So as you can see, I do my first few steps, which is, again, make the yo, drop the O, and add your opposite ending. It's an ER verb, so I'm going to make all my endings AR verbs. Entienda. Now, as you can see, I keep my stem change in the boot, in the yo, tú, él, and ellos form, And then I go back to the E in the nosotros and the vosotros. Now, like always, stem-changing IR verbs like dormir, pedir, sentir, and so many others have special sets of rules. Now, you stem change just like you normally would. Dormir becomes duerma. So in the yo, tú, él, and ellos form, I'm stem changing just as normal, O to UE. However, in the nosotros and vosotros forms, these are for nosotros and vosotros, I have to stem change to these. So O goes to U. If it's an E to I stem changer, it will go E to I. If it's an E to IE stem changer like sentir, it will go E to I. So, por ejemplo, I'm going to take sentir, which is an E to IE stem changing IR verb. So as you can see, in my boot, I do E to IE, but in the nosotros and vosotros, unlike before, I have to stem change those ones as well, from E to I. I wanted to give you another example of that using dormir. Again, we know dormir is O to UE. So in my boot, I'm going to go O to UE, duerma, duermas, duerma, duerman. And then my nosotros and vosotros, instead of reverting back to my O turns to U. Durmamos and durmais. Notice I still keep my AR endings for everything. It doesn't matter what pronoun. Alrighty, parte 3. Now, you know from your several years of Spanish instruction that some verbs have irregular yo forms. Here are some examples. These obviously aren't all of them, but I wanted to give you kind of a little refresher on what some of them are. So we're just going to talk about what the irregular yo verbs are. Hacer in the yo form turns to hago. Tener turns to tengo. Conocer, or any verb ending in CER or CIR, turns to conozco, the ZCO. Salir becomes salgo. Poner becomes pongo. Ver becomes veo. Incluir becomes incluyo. Continuar becomes continuo. So think about why it's so important that we know what the irregular yo verbs are. If one of the steps in forming the subjunctive is to make the yo, that's going to affect everything. So por ejemplo, let's take traer. This is another example of a irregular yo verb. In the yo form, traer is traigo. So I make my yo, I drop my o, then I add my opposite ending. This is an ER verb, so that's why I'm adding a to all my endings. Traiga, traigas, traiga, traigamos, traigais, traigan. Okay, practícalo. And the very last rule that we're going to discuss tonight is car, gar, and zar. The reason that we have to change this is because we're changing the vowel that follows the C, the G, and the Z. Therefore, it's actually going to change the way that we pronounce the K, G, and S sound, which is why we have to change up our endings a little bit. So if you have any verb like buscar, tocar, picar, atacar, anything like that, that ends in a C-A-R, your endings are going to become Q-U-E. So let's conjugate atacar, por ejemplo. See how I have to replace all of the C's with a Q and a U? So I have ataque. If I left it as a C-E, this makes an S sound. That's why I have to change it to the Q-U so I can maintain that K. So ataque, ataques, ataque, ataquemos, ataquéis, ataquen. Notice that they're all the same endings that we've been doing, just E, ES, E, emos, eis, en. The only difference is I have to use a Q and a U. If it ends in a gar, I need to maintain that G sound. Because if I had this, that pronounces it as G, and I want to maintain my G for my G. So I need to add a U in there. So, por ejemplo, vamos a conjugar jugar. Here's an example of jugar. This is a little tricky because it's also a stem changer, so you can't forget your stem changer rules, which means you follow the boot just like you normally would. That means nosotros and vosotros. There is no stem change. This maintains the G, so I have juegue, juegues, juegue, juguemos, juguéis, jueguen. And finally, we have zar, which turns to CE. Again, it's an AR verb, so I have to use my opposite endings, which is E, same concept. Y por fin, practícalo. Adiós, clase. Hasta mañana.